I wanted to touch on the story from yesterday about Ron DeSantis because, man, does this guy try to fashion himself as a new kind of conservative Trump without the baggage. Oh man, you know, I'm anti-woke and I'm going to drain the swamp. There's a quote in this piece about how Trump didn't actually drain the swamp, but I'm going to. That's a little hard to believe when you read this piece, because what is the swamp? How would you define the swamp? Just off the top of your head, what is the definition of the swamp? A corrupt political establishment? That's what most people think of, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think of like military contractors and stuff like that too, but
the standard person is going to think about corruption and, you know, everyone's in it for themselves. That is clearly a hallmark, not the anti-corruption, but the corruption of DeSantis's political rise. This was in the Post yesterday. The headline is, "I could sell golf," in quotes, how DeSantis and aides courted lobbyists for campaign cash. When Florida Governor Ron DeSantis took office in 2019, his political team made a list of the state's top 40 lobbyists and about 100 of their, quote, suggested clients to target for political contributions, according to a fundraising document reviewed by the Washington Post. Next to the name of each lobbyist was a dollar figure, an ask that the DeSantis team hoped they would raise based on their book of clients, whose names were also listed in the document and included large corporations such as Disney and Motorola, as well as sports organization, billionaires, and interest groups with extensive business before the state. The Florida governor's fundraisers hoped that 9 lobbyists would raise at least $1 million each for DeSantis's Political Action Committee, the state and the Republican Governors Association, according to the document, which was drafted by Heather Barker, a top DeSantis aide and his primary fundraiser, and shared with others. To help them haul in large sums of money, the document suggested that lobbyists be allowed to offer their clients certain perks, such as meals and rounds of golf with DeSantis, who loves the sport. DeSantis fundraisers envisioned that some golf outings with the governor would net contributions of $75,000 or more, according to other emails among DeSantis's political advisors. "I could sell golf for $50K this morning," Barker wrote to other DeSantis aides in a 2019 email obtained by the Post, noting that a prominent Tallahassee lobbyist and his wife wanted to play golf with the recently elected DeSantis and First Lady Casey DeSantis at a course the governor favored. The lobbyist would, quote, get money through a client to contribute in exchange for golfing with DeSantis, she wrote. It is unclear if the meeting happened. Barker did not respond to a request for comment. So, like, it's not to golf with DeSantis. Let's be real. It's to get, how long is it
I'm trying to work
do
on my
18 holes? Like what? 6 hours to do 18 holes? 5 hours?
I've never done 18,
4 or
but
5?
it's the longest time.
So that's the value of it. It's the face time, and then the lobbyist is the bag man that shows up and sell or that acts as the intermediary between the special business interests and DeSantis. And then there's a round of golf where they're able to talk through the giveaways that they're going to give in exchange. The 2019 document detailed other avenues for securing contributions, methods for firms to deliver support, golf, lunch, meetings, dinner, tours, events, etc. Each have a threshold. Example, golf, $25K per person, which is a deal, reads the document, whose authenticity was confirmed by multiple people with knowledge of it. While it is common for politicians to seek donations from lobbyists, the efforts by DeSantis to effectively auction off his leisure time to those seeking to influence state policy created a special pathway of access for wealthy donors to the governor that is striking in the way that it was documented in writing, ethics experts said. The golf-related fundraising was a part of a broader push by DeSantis to cultivate relationships with big contributors, some of whom have received state appointments or benefited from state policies, as the Post has previously reported. The Post report they're referring to in particular there is one that shows that there was $92 million in leftover federal COVID relief funds that went to a donor, this one donor, this real estate guy named Husseini, and he ended up using that to construct some sort of shopping center / somewhat housing development down there.
Right.
And that previous article talks about how He was a part of the scheme of getting FaceTime with DeSantis through that. Now, as a candidate for president, DeSantis' close ties with donors could undermine his attempt to portray himself as someone who would do a better job taking on special interest than former President Donald Trump, the polling leader in the GOP race. "We've drained the swamp in here," he said in a recent Fox News interview about his time as governor in Florida. One of the things he did not do was drain the swamp. People familiar with the governor's fundraising described the operation as one that included direct involvement by the governor. DeSantis made some calls to lobbyists, the documents show, and often took meetings that were orchestrated by the team, which was run by political aides to the governor. The Post continues to talk about how involved DeSantis was in this. DeSantis' team sought to take advantage of his special fondness for golf for political fundraising, according to documents and interviews. A state party credit card was on file to cover fees and meals in at least one club where they played, and lobbyists were told he preferred certain courses. One lobbyist involved in the fundraising effort said clients wanted to golf with DeSantis because it guaranteed them hours of FaceTime with the governor.
It wasn't because they're working on their chipping out of sand traps?
It was not. It's about getting your phone calls returned and having the ability to make asks, the lobbyist said. I mean, it's incredible how open they are with this. You want to engender access and goodwill with the governor. More broadly, the documents and interviews provide an extraordinary glimpse of how DeSantis and his team interacted with big donors as they appeared to sell his personal time to political contributors. They included some of Florida's biggest corporations, including some companies that went on to win favorable policy changes from the DeSantis administration. WellCare, a prominent healthcare company, agreed to give $50,000 in the early days of the governor's administration, an email from Barker shows. But the CEO wanted to see the governor. A lunch was planned. The CEO of Welfare must hand deliver the check prior to session. An email from Barker, the fundraiser, reads. The company did not respond to requests for comment. The CEO has to hand deliver a check to DeSantis in order for him to get access. I mean, look, the problem is generally just capitalism, right? Corruption is a byproduct of having a neoliberal style free market fundamentalist worldview, because when you let money run rampant like that, that money is always going to be used to influence political systems. That's just inherent in it. However, the Republican Party is more corrupt than the Democratic Party. And even the crusaders that describe themselves as alternatives or people that are taking on corporations in ways that are purely aesthetic about wokeness and about black people being in cartoons, for example, like DeSantis, behind the scenes, he's taking calls from all of the bagmen that work for them. And that is an important distinction that people need to understand. It's an insane way to run a political system in this day and age. But this is more common than you would think. But it's important to recognize this too, because Ron DeSantis, I hesitate to say that his candidacy is one that's artificially inflated, because I know that there was some enthusiasm for him a few months ago.
Well,
but the thing about it is we're seeing it bear out in poll numbers. Moneyed interests wanted Trump without the baggage. They wanted a guy that they knew they could work with behind the scenes, that they could corrupt, who wasn't such a wild card, who didn't piss off the liberals, who maybe could win over some suburban moms, and meanwhile meet with Club for Growth donors and be the same old person that they've been backing for years and years in Republican primaries, whether it's Scott Walker, whether it's Jeb Bush, whether it's...
well, that's the thing, is Jeb Bush had the big, what do they call it, the war chest last time. It's the exact same sort of big balloon, and they... it's a good sign, and it's partially why Democrats have won elections, that they don't have a bench either that isn't entirely repugnant to American voter, right? Like Joe Biden makes the Republican bench look like absolute, what they are, freaks.
Yeah.
Like, he looks like a normal guy compared to them. And whoever, it's crazy. Like we see DeSantis completely flaming out, and there's no one really to take his place besides Vivek. But to your point about money in politics. Like, this is how this stuff is done. I'd be surprised if most sort of staffs don't have somebody like on the first couple of days being like, hey, let's get a list of all the sort of money piñatas that we can invite for golf.
Yeah.
And I mean, I think like the worst part of it is that we have politicians trying to act like they aren't that, as they are participating in it, like in the most sort of craven way.
Well, and surface level way of, I mean, no, Republicans, this is something for your political education that I think is very valuable. If they ever talk about a corporation, just know this, it's never about the bottom line. Except if they're targeting a specific corporation for their own like HR policies or public relations or advertising. It's aesthetic. It's just about, well, we should get one of our guys in there and they do it better. As opposed to what would really be taking on corporate power would be taxing the hell out of them or breaking them up through antitrust.
And another interesting thing about DeSantis in this context, in that, as you're alluding to, of course, with this story, with like the this one in particular, and also the prelude with the Mori Hosseini guy, you know, getting what he wanted in that interchange, whatever the case was in that regard, is that he's so bought when it comes to like state affairs, but he's also running his campaign in the way where you're like, there's no other way to conclude that this guy is like the most bought and paid for candidate, because a lot of his campaign operations are being basically run through Never Back Down, his PAC, which is basically serving as like his shadow campaign, because they are running a lot of campaign operations in early primary states. But the catch there obviously is, because it's a PAC, the DeSantis campaign can't interact with them, but they are literally operating the majority of his campaign. So he is going to Never Back Down events where obviously his enormous benefactors are paying through the PAC, and he's serving as like a special guest to Never Back Down PAC events.
That's supposedly illegal. And so, but it's not enforceable because our laws are such a joke on it.
And so I think certain even election regulators, if they were actually, I think some of them have been suspect that like he is literally having he's running up to the line of directly negotiating with a PAC supporting him. That's not just supporting him through the coffers or through donations, big money donations. They're literally running his campaign.
Well, let's be real too. I mean, Trump's crossed this line a million times. He's doing it now where he donated some of the money he raised to his, Save America PAC, which is supposedly not associated with him. And now he's like, oh shit, I need that money back for legal bills, fees. So pay it back to my personal PAC, which supposedly has like contribution limits that are way below the millions of dollars in chunks that are being sent back to him from the supposedly independent PAC. Like, it's just disgusting. Right, it's just disgusting, gross corruption. And
what we really need to do is attack free speech, because the problem here is Citizens United, and like, what is the defense that those people said is, well, what are you going to do? Stop me from exercising my free speech? It's like, yeah, we should have publicly funded elections, and there should not be spending allowed outside those elections. Mm-hmm. Sorry if you have so much money in your bank account that you want to use it to influence the election. I'm not going to consider that speech. That's paid speech problem. That's not a free speech issue. And like, so many of our issues are bullshit and reaction and like sort of the conspiratorial, not conspiratorial, but like the organized reaction against sort of liberation as free speech.
Yeah. Anyway. Well, the idea that these right-wing libertarian psychos have been able to reframe spending money as speech, it's the same concept on Twitter right now.
Yep. Makes you think that maybe speech is not really what they're interested in. Yep.